Money's tight this year, so don't expect much, my dad warned. Then I watched every grandkid unwrap iPads and expensive sneakers while my son got a dollar store toy. Mom chuckled. Be grateful he got anything. I smiled, took a photo, and what I posted the next morning blew up the entire family group chat. I, 34M, have always known that my parents played favorites, but I spent most of my life making excuses for them. I convinced myself that my older brother needed more help because he struggled to keep a job, and that my younger sister deserved more attention because she was the baby of the family. I was the reliable one, the one who went to college, got a stable career, married a wonderful woman, and had a beautiful son. Because I was independent, I became the invisible child. I accepted that role for a long time, but everything shattered into a million pieces this past holiday season, leading to a fallout so spectacular that my extended family is still dealing with the shockwaves. The setup began a few weeks before the holidays. My dad called me on my way home from work to warn me about the upcoming family gathering. He spent 20 minutes lamenting about the economy and his fixed income, eventually giving me a stern warning that money was going to be extremely tight this year, so I should not expect much in terms of gifts. He emphasized that the holidays were about family presence, not presents. I assured him that it was completely fine, that my wife and I did not expect anything at all, and that we just wanted our son to have a good time with his grandparents and cousins. Based on his warning, my wife and I decided to be incredibly mindful. We bought modest, thoughtful, and inexpensive gifts for my siblings, their spouses, and their kids, wanting to ensure we did not embarrass my parents or make anyone feel uncomfortable if the gift exchange was supposed to be scaled back. We arrived at my parents' house on the morning of the celebration. The moment we walked into the living room, I knew my dad's warning had been a targeted lie. The space under the massive, glittering tree was overflowing with towering stacks of beautifully wrapped boxes. There were easily dozens of packages, and many of them had the distinct, sleek shape of high-end electronics. I felt a knot form in my stomach, but I pushed it down, hoping against hope that perhaps my siblings had gone overboard for their own kids. When it was time to open presents, the truth became undeniable. My parents sat in their matching recliners, beaming with pride as they handed out their gifts. I watched in growing horror as my brother's two teenagers tore into their packages, revealing brand new iPads, expensive noise-canceling headphones, and the latest generation gaming consoles. My sister's kids were handed large boxes that contained highly sought-after, limited-edition sneakers that I knew cost hundreds of dollars a pair, along with thick envelopes of cash. My parents received glowing praise and hugs from my siblings, who acted as if this extravagant display of wealth was completely normal. Through it all, my 7-year-old son sat patiently on the floor, his eyes wide with wonder, waiting for his turn. Finally, my dad reached into the back of the pile and pulled out a small, poorly wrapped item. He tossed it casually toward my son, telling him to open it up. My son eagerly tore away the paper. Inside was a cheap, generic plastic toy car in a flimsy cardboard blister pack. The plastic was already dented, the paint on the toy was chipped, and it still had a neon orange clearance sticker on the back, marking it at a little over $1. It was the kind of toy you buy at a gas station to keep a toddler quiet on a road trip, not a holiday gift from a grandparent. My son looked confused, turning the cheap plastic package over in his hands, glancing from the towering pile of discarded Apple product boxes across the room back to his own lap. My wife's face turned completely white. I could see her hands trembling as she gripped the armrest of the sofa. I looked directly at my parents, waiting for an explanation, perhaps a joke, or maybe the revelation of a second actual gift. Instead, my mom looked right back at me. She let out a soft, dismissive chuckle and mentioned that I should just be grateful he got anything at all, considering how expensive everything else had been. She added that young boys break their toys anyway, so it did not make sense to waste good money on him. A cold, absolute clarity washed over me in that exact moment. I did not yell. I did not throw a fit. I did not give them the satisfaction of calling me dramatic or sensitive, which had always been their go-to defense when I pointed out their unequal treatment. Instead, I smiled warmly. I pulled out my phone, walked over to my son, and told him to hold his new toy up high. I framed the shot perfectly. I captured my son's forced, confused little smile holding the dollar store plastic car, but I made absolutely sure the background of the photo was in sharp focus. The background showcased my nephews and nieces holding their brand new iPads and designer sneakers, surrounded by mounds of premium wrapping paper, with my parents smiling proudly behind them. I put my phone away, helped my wife gather our coats, and calmly announced that we had another engagement to get to. My parents barely looked up, waving us off dismissively as they continued to fawn over my brother's children. We walked out to the car in complete silence. The moment the doors shut, my wife burst into tears of pure frustration, and my son quietly asked if he had done something wrong to make his grandparents mad at him. I had to pull the car over down the street to hold my son and explain to him that he was perfect, that he was so deeply loved, and that sometimes adults make very stupid, cruel mistakes that have nothing to do with him. We drove straight to a high-end toy store that was open for the holiday, let him pick out whatever he wanted to salvage the day, and then went home. That night, after my son was asleep, I sat down at my kitchen island with a glass of whiskey and opened the extended family group chat. This chat included over 40 people. My parents, my siblings, all my aunts, uncles, older cousins, and even a few family friends. I attached the photo I had taken earlier in the day. Then, I typed out the message that would burn the bridges I had spent my life maintaining. I wrote a highly detailed message thanking my parents for hosting such an eye-opening holiday. I explained that I was incredibly relieved to see that they had managed to bounce back so well from their severe financial crisis. I then revealed the piece of information that my siblings and extended family did not know. 6 months prior, my parents had come to me crying, claiming they were facing imminent foreclosure on their house and could not afford their medical bills. I explained to the group chat that I had emptied a significant portion of my savings to give them a $10,000 emergency loan to save their home, which they swore they would pay back but never did. I noted that I was thrilled to see my emergency funds had been put to such excellent use, pointing out the background of the photo where the other grandchildren were holding thousands of dollars in premium electronics, while my own son was given a clearance aisle plastic car that cost slightly over $1. I concluded the message by stating that I considered the unreturned $10,000 to be a permanent severance package, that I was officially done being the family ATM, and that I wished them all a wonderful life without me. I hit send, put my phone on silent, and went to bed with the first profound sense of peace I had felt in decades. Update 1. When I woke up the next morning and checked my phone, I had over 100 missed calls and hundreds of text messages. The group chat had devolved into absolute unprecedented chaos. My mother's older sister, who is essentially the matriarch of the extended family and a stickler for fairness, had been the first to reply. She demanded to know if what I wrote was true, asking my parents directly if they had seriously taken $10,000 from me and then spent it spoiling the other grandchildren while humiliating my son. My dad had attempted to do damage control, sending frantic, poorly spelled messages claiming I was exaggerating, that the loan was a misunderstanding, and that I was just being jealous and petty about presents. But the photo was undeniable. My cousins started chiming in, expressing their disgust. Several aunts and uncles pointed out how incredibly cruel my mother's comment was, which I had detailed in the chat. My brother, realizing his kids' expensive gifts were suddenly the center of a massive scandal, tried to attack me. He sent several aggressive texts to my personal number, demanding that I delete the post immediately, accusing me of ruining the holidays, and claiming I was making our parents look like monsters to the rest of the family. I did not reply to the group chat. Instead, I took a screenshot of my brother's text and posted it in the main chat. I added a brief message stating that if my brother was so concerned about our parents' public image, he was more than welcome to assume their debt and pay me back the $10,000 they stole from my family, effectively buying my silence. The chat went dead silent for about an hour. Then, my aunt posted a long message stating she was deeply ashamed of my parents and that they were uninvited from her upcoming New Year's Eve party, which is the biggest family event of the year. My parents began calling me repeatedly. They called my wife's phone. They even tried calling my home landline. I blocked their numbers across the board. The panic in their voicemails before the blocks went through was palpable. They were begging me to call them back, saying we needed to handle this privately like a family. I realized they weren't sorry for what they did. They were just terrified of the public exposure and the sudden loss of their pristine reputation among their siblings. Update 2. The fallout from the group chat was just the beginning. Giving them that money 6 months ago was a massive mistake, but it wasn't the only financial string tying me to them. Because I had always been the responsible, successful son, my parents had slowly integrated themselves into my financial ecosystem over the years, crying poverty whenever I tried to establish boundaries. I took the day off work and sat down with my laptop and a notebook. I started auditing every single account I possessed. I realized I had been paying for their premium unlimited cell phone plan for the last 5 years because they convinced me they needed to be on my family plan for the discount, but they never actually sent me their share of the bill. I realized they were still on my premium streaming accounts. Most importantly, I realized that 3 years ago, when my dad's transmission blew, I had financed a very reliable used SUV for them under my name, using my excellent credit. They were supposed to make the monthly payments to me. They made the first 3, and then the payments slowly stopped. I had been eating that monthly cost ever since just to keep the peace. I decided the peace was officially over. First, I logged into my cellular provider's portal. I selected their 2 lines, hit the cancellation button, and watched them vanish from my account. I then changed every password to every streaming service. Finally, I dug out the spare key to the SUV and the title, which was entirely in my name. I drove over to their house that afternoon. I parked down the street so they wouldn't see me coming. I walked up to the driveway, got into the SUV, started it up with my spare key, and drove it right back to my house. I parked it in my garage and closed the door. Within 2 hours, the frantic messages started coming through on my wife's phone, since I still had them blocked on mine. My dad was demanding to know if I had stolen his car, claiming he was going to call the police. I told my wife to reply with a very simple message. She wrote back, telling him that the vehicle was legally registered and financed under my name, that they had defaulted on their verbal agreement to pay for it years ago, and that the police would gladly confirm the legal ownership if he wanted to invite them over. She also informed them that their cell phone service had been terminated and suggested they use some of their remaining holiday cash to buy prepaid phones. That evening, I heard a furious pounding on my front door. I checked the security cameras and saw both my parents standing on my porch. My dad looked enraged, his face bright red, while my mom was crying dramatically, clutching her purse. I did not open the door. I activated the 2-way speaker on the camera. I asked them what they wanted. My dad immediately started screaming into the camera, demanding the car back, yelling that they needed it for groceries and doctor appointments, and accusing me of being a heartless, cruel son for leaving them stranded without phones or a vehicle. My mom wailed that she was sorry about the toy, that it was just a joke, and that I was tearing the family apart over a piece of plastic. I spoke very calmly through the speaker. I told them this wasn't about a piece of plastic. I explained that it was about a lifetime of disrespect, culminating in them taking my hard-earned money under the guise of an emergency, only to use it to lavish expensive gifts on the grandchildren they actually liked, while deliberately humiliating my son to his face. I informed them that they had 30 seconds to step off my property, or I would press the panic button on my security system and have them arrested for trespassing. My dad raised his fist as if to punch the camera, but my mom grabbed his arm, looking terrified. She realized I was completely serious, that the submissive, compliant son they had walked all over for decades was completely gone. They turned around, walked down the driveway, and ordered a rideshare back to their house. Update 3. It has been about a month since the holiday incident, and the dust has finally started to settle, revealing the absolute wreckage of my parents' situation. Without me subsidizing their lives, their financial reality hit them like a freight train. They had completely alienated the extended family with their actions, meaning none of my wealthy aunts or uncles were willing to lend them a dime. The family consensus was that my parents were financially abusive and toxic, and the matriarch aunt had effectively blacklisted them from all family gatherings. Desperate, my parents turned to my brother and sister, the golden children they had spoiled for years. They begged my brother to take over the financing for a new car, and asked my sister to add them to her cell phone plan. Predictably, the siblings who were taught their whole lives to take without giving absolutely refused to step up. My brother claimed he couldn't afford it because he had just spent so much money on the holidays, conveniently ignoring that he had basically paid for that holiday with the money they stole from me. My sister told them she didn't want the hassle. I found out through a cousin that my parents were forced to sell a significant amount of their belongings, including my mom's jewelry, just to afford a cheap, unreliable clunker of a car and to keep their utilities on. They are currently facing the very real possibility of having to downsize and move into a small apartment because, without my financial backing, they truly cannot afford their lifestyle. My brother attempted to contact me one last time through a fake social media account. He sent a long, rambling message accusing me of destroying our parents' lives and demanding that I fix the situation. He tried to guilt-trip me, saying our parents were depressed and struggling. I read the message, laughed out loud, and replied with a single sentence. I told him that he was the favorite son, so it was finally his time to shine and take care of them. Then I blocked that account too. I sold the SUV they had been driving and used the equity to book an incredible, all-inclusive tropical vacation for my wife and son for the upcoming spring break. My son has completely forgotten about the cheap plastic toy. He is thriving in school and is so excited about getting to swim in the ocean for the first time. My wife told me the other night that a massive weight seems to have been lifted from my shoulders. And she is right. Cutting out toxic family members, even when they are your own parents, is incredibly painful at first. The guilt is conditioned into you from birth, but once you rip off the bandage, take away their power, and expose their behavior to the light, the silence that follows is beautiful. I lost $10,000, but I bought my freedom, my self-respect, and the absolute safety of my wife and son. I consider that the best investment I have ever made.